Happy Super Bowl Sunday. I'm Maya Lockett and welcome back to your NCC News Sports Update. Today was one of the most important days in sport history. Let's take a look. In Washington, lawmakers are urging the White House and several federal agencies to increase drug prevention and stop fentanyl from coming outside of the U.S. President Biden is asking Congress to pass a bipartisan bill that is aimed at fixing aging infrastructure and creating new jobs. This could carry a price tag of over $1 trillion. Off-season is always an exciting time of the year because basketball teams have a chance to rebuild, regroup, and figure out what's going to go on next season.
Protesters are having to use leaf blowers to blow away the tear gas that will be released on them.
14 out of 17 Onondaga County legislators are using private emails to handle public business. Yes, that's right. These government officials do not use government emails. Congressman McGovern is calling for an anti-hunger conference that would bring the White House, Congress, and others together to come up with a plan on how to address America's nutritional needs. Synthetic opioids like fentanyl accounted for 80% of all overdose deaths last year.
Fentanyl is so potent that if you give it at a slightly higher dose than what is going to make you high, it basically will lead to a respiratory depression and an overdose.
Massachusetts saw a spike in opioid overdoses during the pandemic.
Across the state saw about a 5% increase in fatal overdoses. In Springfield, there was a 19% increase.
The COVID pandemic has covered up the fact that we are still suffering from an opioid crisis, which is at historic highs, impacting families all across Western Massachusetts, all across our country.
Despite deadly risks, many turn to drugs to deal with the stress and uncertainty of COVID-19.
What we've seen because of the pandemic is a rise in mental health issues, a rise in substance abuse issues.
In Washington, lawmakers are urging the White House and several federal agencies to increase drug prevention and stop fentanyl from coming outside of the U.S.
We can't be incarcerating people because they are using these drugs. We have to give them the treatment which they need because recovery is possible.
Senator Markey and others are sending this letter to Health and Human Services, the White House, and the Drug Enforcement Administration to urge them to continue measures put in place during the pandemic that will improve access to substance abuse disorder treatment. Maya Lockett, 22 News.
Look, we live in the richest country in the history of the world. As we speak, close to 40 million Americans don't know where the next meal is going to come from.
The side have suggested that we just move on from this horror. But to gloss over...
I believe that hunger is essentially a political condition. We have the resources, we have the money, we have the food, we have the infrastructure, we have everything we need to end it, but we don't have the political will. Agency or department that can solve this. In order to solve this problem, every cabinet official has to be involved.
Congressman McGovern is calling for an anti-hunger conference that would bring the White House, Congress, and others together to come up with a plan on how to address America's nutritional needs.
For President Biden to call a White House conference on food insecurity would be such an enormous statement. So now 1 in 6 kids in Western Mass is food insecure.
We do not have a plan in this country to end hunger. We don't have a plan in this Commonwealth of Massachusetts to end hunger.
Let's move on from this horror. But to gloss over it would be an abdication of our duty.
Protesters have gathered 6 nights in a row in Rochester, New York, after the story of Daniel Prude, who died after being restrained by Rochester Police Department officers in March, was released on September 2nd.
This is a human being with a spirit and a soul and a mind and a body. And then to see them put a bag over his head and to see them laugh, it's just so inhumane.
People from all over came to Rochester to fight for equality and justice for Daniel Prude.
If we don't make a change, things won't change.
But many believe that there will not be any change if people do not understand the purpose of the Black Lives Matter protest.
But they don't understand our walk. They're not empathetic and put themselves, suppose they were on the other side of this fence. How would they feel if it was their son, their brother?
After several days of tense demonstrations, protesters have found different ways to protect themselves.
Protesters are having to use leaf blowers to blow away the tear gas that will be released on them.
I can't understand why they would think they have to use such unnecessary force against people with umbrellas and tub tops.
Protesters plan to continue their fight until justice is served for Daniel Prude.
Just thinking about Daniel Prude, and his family, and that they'll never get to see him again.
For Mornings on the Hill, I'm Maya Lockett.